Mr. Dustan Biegler. How are you?
Real good. How are you, Dominic?
I'm good. I'm so happy to have you on the show.
Yeah, I'm honored. I guess I kind of got recommended for this subject, and
Yeah,
um,
John Dye.
I've yes, John Dye, and I think he probably did that because we're one of the roofing companies that probably have more assets than most. We're asset heavy, and some of them are really light. So that's probably why he recommended me.
Yeah, well, thanks to John for that. John's always in the background working hard. He's a great guy.
He's a connector.
Yeah, he's a connector. I'm a connector. I think you're a connector too.
So, well, I try to be when I know somebody.
When you know somebody, yeah. Yeah. So John Dye connected us because I was asking a question on the Facebook group, which is called Contractor Strategy Group. We were talking about ROI on equipment because
Yep.
so many people in my conversations with them anyways, they kind of make a gut decision. Like, I think we're ready to buy a truck or upgrade our vehicle, or, if they have a shop, they might say, now I feel like we can buy a CNC, but they don't do the math.
Right.
And the cash flow implications are serious if you don't do
Oh,
that.
yeah. And your time can be your time.
Yeah, time can
Some of
hit you
these
too.
things will take you outside of your core business,
Yeah, are the most important things. Hey, let's go back so that people listening understand, because you're on the Profit Tool Belt podcast where we talk to contractors, construction business owners of all trades all across the world. Well, that was a little egotistical. The English-speaking world.
Maybe there's probably translators.
There's probably translations. But so that everybody listening understands who you are and who Apple Roofing is, can you give us a high-level overview?
Okay. So yeah, I'm the CEO at Apple Roofing. Apple Roofing is about a $32 million company, and we operate in the Midwest primarily. We also have office in Phoenix, across Iowa, Kansas, Illinois. So, but we go all over when needed. So,
And what kind of roofing is it that you do?
we do mostly steep slope.
And
That's
residential,
correct.
commercial, residential.
We do some commercial, but if it's commercial, it needs to be steep slope.
Yeah. And why did you
So,
guys decide to specialize in steep slope?
that's what we've been really good at. That's where our knowledge was more than on the flat.
Right.
And flat is always very tempting because you get large revenues out of, flat work because you're dealing with a lot of square footage. So it's always been tempting, but we've always said we're not going to go down that road until we really feel like we've captured as much as we can in the residential side and have I guess, best setup that we can for pursuing that venture of flat, right? Not just wing it.
I can already tell this is going to be a good show because you just said in your whole approach something that we talk about, or I talk about as a business coach, is understand what you're good at and do that thing.
Yep.
And just stay there.
Yeah. I mean, we actually increased our revenue by decreasing the amount of services that we've done. And we've actually increased like our satisfaction rate and things like that by decreasing the amount of services that we do. So you got to listen to the customer sometimes.
Yeah. Although it can be scary, right? Was it scary before you took the step to decrease services and change your brochures?
Yes. I remember the year, it was 2015, and we were like, oh my gosh, we're going to drop off this service. This is how much revenue we do there, and we still profit there. Why are we going to do this? But we knew that for the long-term vision and scaling what we wanted to do, there was some bottlenecks in place. And that's why we just decided to do it. And it really accelerated our growth by causing us to focus on the one thing.
Right. Well, that's great. So this isn't even the topic that we're here to talk about today.
Right. Yeah. We got.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what this is about the business of the contracting business. I'm not here to talk to people about how to swing the hammer better, how their chop saw works better, how to repair their compressor. I don't care. Not that I don't care. It's just that's for other podcasts. This is about the business of the contracting
You're focusing on
business.
what you're good at.
Oh, nicely done. For those of you who are listening to this, it's a video as well that you can see on YouTube. And Dustin was just giving me that wise eye on the video. So you can listen to it as an audio, watch it as a video, any way you like. Anyways, Dustin, hey, before we get into the topic, you're in Nebraska, right?
I am.
What's going on in Nebraska? What should we know about Nebraska that we don't know?
Well, everybody knows we've got a lot of corn. Big Ten football was off, but now it's back on, so that's positive. Hopefully we get all the businesses back up and going 100% here. Everything's pretty much back 100% except for Lancaster County. So we're looking on the up and up.
Good. Everybody I've met from Nebraska in my business career is super nice.
Well, I like to think so. The only place I've gone that I'm like, wow, these people even shock me is South Dakota.
They're nicer?
I think so.
Yeah. Well, there's less of them.
Even when you watch the news, you're like, wow, even they're really nice. They're covering something positive.
That's weird. Yeah.
Right. So,
well,
I like it.
Yeah, it's a great place. And hopefully I get to travel down to Nebraska and meet you face-to-face one day and go for a meal.
Come for a Husker game.
I will. Or some whitetail or something.
There we go. Or some hunting, you bet.
Yeah. So let's talk about the ROI, though, because if I understand right, you and I had a pre-interview and we talked about a lot of things in that call.
Right.
You have a fleet of 70 trucks. And
we do.
This whole conversation started when I was talking to one of my clients, much smaller. You know, you're doing 32 million. These guys are doing just under $1 million. And they were talking about whether they should upgrade to a new vehicle or not, a new Sprinter van, or keep their old. I think it's a Ford Econoline. And as you can see from the feedback on the Facebook group, there's a lot of interest around how do we calculate ROIs. How do you guys do it? 70 trucks, you have to have some.
Absolutely. I mean, really, when you talk about any like equipment at all, right? There's like, obviously the smaller stuff, maybe you don't sweat so much, right? Because of your time. But the first thing I'll say is we all, even us guys, we're just like women. We love to shop, right? We just shop for our kind of toys. Yeah. Right. And so I caution people to like avoid like impulse buying, right? Because we all want this thing and we want to make sure that we're making a smart decision. And then whatever you're looking at buying, like identify what's it going to do for your company up front. You know, what's the need, what's its purpose, and like, how is it going to help your business become more profitable? Is it going to increase gross revenue? For example, in that truck scenario, I'm assuming that truck might be for a different sales rep. So maybe that's something they need. And then maybe by buying it, they'll be able to letter it up. So they'll get some marketing out of it, you know? So I'm a big fan of like, doing like a pros and cons.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
Like
on paper.
Yeah, or an Excel or whatever. I'll just throw a sheet up and say, hey, here's what I like about this. Here's what I don't like about this, especially on the bigger purchases, you know?
Yeah.
And then, measure it against the data you already have. So example, if you're going to buy that pickup and maybe it's for a salesperson, okay, how much revenue do I need to bring in to make this thing break even, right? Or become profitable. Yeah. And I think that's a really easy thing for most companies to do because they've already got the data, right? So if they know that their sales rep sells X amount on average across their team, they can say, hey, I can assume that a person that fills this truck will fall kind of in this range, right? And then what kind of a net, at the end of the year do they make on that revenue? And does that exceed the investment that it takes to get that person up and going, right? Yeah. And knowing like how long that's going to take, and then maybe how quickly this thing's going to depreciate is a good thing to know. I mean, for us, I'm going to say like we try to get rid of our trucks. You talked about trade-off.
Right.
We found like around 180,000 miles. We end up getting like a major repair, right? And that's kind of one of them things you're like, oh man, now the truck's got it's got 180,000 miles on it, and I'm going to have it's might be worth 5,000 or 6,000, and I'm going to have to stick 3 or 4 into it. Like, ugh, you know,
Doesn't
right?
make sense anymore.
A ticking time bomb until the next thing goes. So, you know, we've kind of used that trigger as, okay, let's get rid of them at this point, right? That's based on, you know, past data. But if that's the case, and you know that you're going to get rid of your truck, let's just say in, you know, at 180,000, and you put on 40,000 a year, let's say, well, then, you know, okay, it's going to take me 4.5 years is all I'm going to get out of this truck. Right. So, and then figure in what's my maintenance going to be on the truck. You know, that's important to know. What's my taxes and regulation, right? Plates, all that going to cost. And then say, okay, I'm buying this truck for 25,000. I'm figuring over the 5 or 4.5 years, I'll probably stick 5,000 in for maintenance and oil changes, tires, whatever, right?
Yeah.
And your tax or whatever. And then basically, what's the breakdown per year? What's that going to cost me per year, right? Like a little over $6,000.
And
right?
sometimes buying a better vehicle that's more expensive might be the right solution instead of buying a cheap one that's got no warranty or is missing a couple of oil changes, whatever the benefits are of buying that.
Well, yeah, we've taken the decision to go ahead and buy our vehicles new. Okay. And the reason is because, well, we had some bad experience with some of the used, right? Like you might not have good data to measure against when you buy that, because it might depend on how it was treated.
Right.
And so the other thing is reliability, right? If you're going to not be having a vehicle that's reliable, that's a great cost to yourself.
Oh, imagine not showing up to a sales call, not being able to deliver product, broken down on the side of the road when it's already a wrapped vehicle. Doesn't look very good.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned like also like the cash flow side of this thing, right? You should have the cash flow to justify the purchase, or at least that the bank will say yes. Or if they say no, you should probably listen to them. You know, that's some people might be tempted to go find like alternative ways of financing something. And that usually if the bank said no, you're leveraged enough already. You know, don't leverage yourself too much to try and make a decision like this.
It does. At that point, though, you know, because sometimes we make decisions, especially starting up the business or investing for growth, you might feel a little bit over leveraged.
Absolutely.
You actually opened with this. Is make sure you're not confusing what you need with what you want.
Absolutely. Right? And since you said new businesses, I'm going to say this too, though. Some businesses do a very good job of using their profits to reinvest in their business. And I think that's a great idea. If you can say, hey, by spending this, I'm going to grow my revenue or my profit or both, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also a very good strategy to reduce your tax burden, right, at the end of the year. So I think you have to figure that in, because when you consider, you know, the write-off for equipment, I mean, you're basically buying it for somewhere around 40% off, right? So that's a big deal. And you get to use that money that you earned to continue to invest in your business, which is good for everybody, right? The dealership, the opportunities you're going to provide, you're going to grow. And eventually, when you get to some size, you aren't able to take advantage of that to its full extent anymore. But
as much as you can.
While you're small, I think that's one of the most important things for a company to focus on is meet with that accountant at the end of the year and say, okay, how much, you know, cash flow am I going to have, and what's my tax bill look like, and how should we reduce that? You know, maybe through investing in some equipment.
Let me ask you a question here, Dustin, because you just mentioned looking at the cash flow with the accountant at the end of the year. You run a $32 million business. Yep. Was it always $32 million?
Oh, absolutely not.
What was it when you started?
$750,000 first year.
First year. So, but you started from scratch, from zero?
Yep.
when did you start paying attention to the numbers of your business?
You know, so I have a background in roofing prior to when I started Apple. So I had another company prior to this, and I sold that one, and then started Apple with Marcus. And I can't probably give myself props for this because my accountant and Marcus have always been like really focused on like numbers and such. So really, we've focused on numbers pretty much from the beginning. I mean, we started in September of 2011, and we've always had the kinds of minds in our business that are like, okay, what are the numbers? Let's break it down. I mean, we set like forecasts of everything, and I'm trying to think of the word, but I can't pull it out of air. It's like really simple word
like
here.
Strategic planning?
Well, basically budgets. There it is.
Oh,
that's
okay,
the word.
budgets.
So, right, like I want to know if you take data from year to year, can you improve on what you're spending on material or labor or marketing or trucks or whatever whatever the spend might be? Take those expenses, categorize them, and try to figure out, how can you do better? Increase one side, decrease the other, right? It's the key to it.
Yeah.
So
we call that, I call that, and it's a formula. There's 3 formulas that we all know, but we don't realize they can be welded together. When they're welded together, they're stronger than any one formula. So there's the customer formula, the revenue formula, and the profit formula. And as a business coach, I actually dance inside that thing because it tells me which levers to pull or push or ignore or where to double down. And you know, if you just say to your accountant, whoever's listening, if you just say to your bookkeeper, go save me 10% on everything, it's probably not realistic. But if you sit down and you come up with a strategy and say, let's look at these couple of things and figure out how we can do it different or better or more cost effectively, then you start to see gains. But you can't just, you're not the king of the country. You can't just say, I want this done, and it automatically 10% shaves off.
I mean, if you're lucky, after a while, if you can shave a quarter or 0.5% off something, and, at the end of the day, when you're paying attention to something, you're putting effort toward it.
Yeah.
Right. So no matter how successful you are, you're probably better off than you were if you hadn't been paying attention to it. Right.
So that's the ROI of the owner's time that you're talking about.
Yep.
Right? Because you can't be bothered with, not that small decisions or small financial decisions aren't important. They're important because unless we show our team that they're important, they won't take them seriously. But can I do the math here? And anybody listening can do this math in their head. You mentioned you're doing $32 million a year.
Correct.
So I just put $32 million into my handy solar powered calculator. And let's assume you work, 2,000 hours a year, like 50 weeks a year, 40, 50 hours a week.
Yep.
So your time, this podcast episode is worth $16,000. 1 hour of your time is worth $16,000.
Depending on what your net is, right?
Yeah, net. But then let me just do this as, again, your first year you did $750,000. So let's talk to the $750,000 business owner who's sitting there thinking, how am I ever going to, I can't get past 750. 750 sounds like the max limit. Well, for that person, 1 hour of their time, and again, I'll just divide it by 2,000 hours for the year. Again, anybody listening, do it with your own calculation. So your time used to be worth $375 per hour. You have to have the ROI of your time as the owner.
Yeah. Well, actually, I just talked about this like this morning with my office manager, but
when she said, why are you wasting your time on Dom's podcast? You're worth $16,000 an hour.
No. This is actually the stuff I should be doing, right? Yeah. And I think that's important too, as you go along in your business, is knowing, okay, what should I be doing and what shouldn't I be doing? I actually heard somebody say or write, I can't remember where, I can't give them credit, but they said, avoid minimum wage activities. Right. And I was like, oh, that's a good saying. Like the more you can delegate out to somebody else, you're letting them sharpen their skills so they can be more valuable, but you're also freeing up your time to focus on the things you should be.
Right.
So I thought that was a good saying, but what I was getting at though, sorry, was I get shiny thing anyway. When you're when you're at your first, probably 1 to, 5 million in revenue,
Yeah.
most companies, really should be focusing on just that, like my revenue. They need to get better at sales, get better offerings, higher close rates, things like that, right? And then as soon as you start in, this is the roofing industry, keep in mind. But as soon as you hit probably, 5 to 15 million, you're spending that time like in the operations side. Like, okay, now we have all this volume coming through our pipe. We're going to now have to like fix some of these bottlenecks that we have.
Right.
And then in that area and on upward probably to 25 million, I think you're really focused on systems and processes, and then I think after 25 million, I mean, you've kind of got quite a few systems, processes in place that got you there.
Say, yeah.
And now I think you've got to transition to like leadership, right? If you're going to continue to expand from there, you need new geography, which you can't be everywhere. Now you need leaders. So that's where we're focused on now, is focusing on leadership.
Leaders. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. That's how we're going to continue to grow.
Yeah. You talked about the different categories of the size of sales, and in that, sub $1 million, maybe all the way up to 5 million, concentrating on sales. What's interesting, and I hear this back from contractors and construction owners, is they didn't come into this business to be in sales.
No.
They're really good at roofing, siding, painting, glaziers, cabinet makers, whatever that's their trade.
I was a roofer.
You were a roofer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you had to make that switch to, I'm a business. Was it hard for you to make the switch to say, I'm not on the tools?
Yes. And no. I was, everything that I've done, I've kind of been like forced into, right? Like as you grow, you're just like, oh, I no longer have time to actually be nailing, so I was forced out of it. So I didn't necessarily go about it as intentionally, as I would in my second life. If I was to come back and do this again, I would be much more intentional about how I did things, right? But I learned along the way. I'm just like everybody else. I mean, we're all learning, and I'm continuing to learn. And I know more now than I did yesterday, but yeah. I got to say my journey was just like anybody else's, learning along the way. If honestly, if I could tell my younger self to come get coached, I'd be talking to, somebody like you, because man, we would have got from where we were to where we are so much quicker, right? Faster. With the right mentoring. Yeah. So mentors are huge.
Even for myself, we were talking just before the show, I have a coach. I've been a professional business coach for 20 years, and not just a coach. I've also started and sold a couple of my own companies, done okay at that. But I recognize I need a coach.
I think we all do, no matter what level you're at.
Yeah. Could you imagine if your favorite pro sports team took to the field without the coaching staff?
Right. I mean, and that's the reality of it, is the coach also helps the team, set the mission, and I guess attracts the best players, right? And the best players usually win. So I really, but the system and the process, or the plays in sports, right? Like, yeah, that's what's going to make the difference.
Yeah.
You could take the best player, but if he is not making the right plays, it's
a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah. Or if you're using the wrong tool, if you're trying to drive a nail with a set of slip joint pliers, you've got a tool, you have the wrong tool for the wrong job.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, all of the little decisions that you make as you go through your business journey, like, you have no idea how far they might derail you from what you're trying to accomplish or propel you forward. Right. I mean, getting back to the ROI thing, I mean, sometimes we have to be like, is this something I should buy, or what's my other alternatives? Can I rent this thing? Should I be doing a third party? Yeah. I mean, is this a part of my core business, or is this going to lead me down this other path? Right. I mean, I've gone there, I've done it. I've made good decisions. I've made some really bad ones, And
you have to tell us now, Dustin, what did you buy? Did you buy a cherry picker? A picker truck?
No.
Scissor
Oh,
lift?
okay. So I do have a crane.
Oh, okay.
But let me tell you, when I bought that, I had no idea what I was getting into. It was not an educated enough decision, right?
Mm,
And it was one of them things that like kind of snowballs, and you're like,
yeah.
oh, I'm invested now. Oh, I'm
Oh,
invested.
yeah.
You better keep going. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, so man, when I talk about the crane, right? Like, I'm not saying it was a bad decision. I don't know that yet, or if it's a good decision, right? Like, I've probably gotten a little lucky with it because this year we've benefited greatly by having our own inventory. And
Oh,
because
you're
there's
big
so
enough
many,
to buy, like to wholesale buy your own roofing
correct.
products? Oh, good.
Yes.
So the
So,
crane delivers on site.
correct. Yep. So, but I mean, when I bought the crane, I mean, not, okay, let's put it this way. When I bought my first truck, delivery truck, I was thinking very like, okay, I can buy this for this, and I can deliver it for that, whatever. No big deal. Sounds like it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
And as the roads come along, well, in the reality of how this has evolved, it's a distribution business in a way, only to myself, but it is not what we do as a core. It's a separate entity, and we've actually formed it as a separate entity to track it, right? But I mean,
Brilliant.
I'm trying to think of everything that is involved in this thing, and I mean, the things that maybe people didn't think about was, okay, I'm going to need a driver. I need a certified crane operator. How much fuel am I going to need? How much is the maintenance going to be?
Yeah.
Oh, and I got
Hydraulic
to,
hose fittings is an entire industry on its own,
yeah. And
right?
I mean, to deliver, I also need inventory. Now we're sitting on $2 million of inventory out, in the yard. And I had to put up $1 million building, and I had to pour $250,000 of concrete. You know what I mean? Like, did I,
Gee.
did I envision this happening, on the front end? If I had realized everything that would have gone in it, I know I would have been scared to do it, you
Yeah.
know? And that's
It's
another thing, like on our emotions, right? I think you have to identify, like, am I scared to do this, or do I want this thing because it's cool? Because we all do that too. Like, um, well, I'm going to use the example of a truck again, right? Uh, let's use the example of UPS. When you see a UPS truck driving down the street,
right.
it's always brown. It's not sexy, but it's very utility, right? Like,
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
UPS. Very utility though. It's
Yeah.
meant to do what the job it's meant to do, right? When you go see a roofer's truck, usually it's about, lifted 2.5 feet off the
Oh, yeah.
ground,
35
right?
inch mutters.
Yeah, like it's got
Yeah.
all the chrome in the world. And those are types of things that you have to go, okay, am I,
Am I
which
fooling
portion of
myself?
this,
Yeah.
is utility, and which part is my cool factor, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So however
And
you want to,
there's a whole bunch of guys driving around right now getting mad at us, going, "Go, you don't understand. I need those chrome rims." And I'm not taking it
well,
away from you. If that's what you work for and that's what you
actually, I
want,
mean,
for sure. But
you could take all those things and make a pros and cons list to it, right? I
yeah,
mean, on a pro side, you're probably grabbing attention, right? If you wanted to justify it for marketing in your own head, maybe you could do that. I don't know. If you wanted to say that on the negative side, that maybe the customer isn't going to view you as a, company as much as they are, like, they're going to start thinking about you personally, right?
right.
That's
Yeah.
probably true as well. I mean, that's why I like those columns, because you get to see all the negative and be honest with yourself as you do it, right? Like, here's the reality. It's going to steal cash flow out of my business. Hey, but maybe I'll work a couple more hours because I'm proud of my truck and I love being seen in it. And
Yeah.
it's very comfortable, whatever. Right. But knowing what your pros and cons are, I think is a big deal.
So
Now,
what you're talking about is the logic behind the decision. As long as your logic is sound, you would
right.
hope that it's the right
Absolutely.
idea.
Yeah.
Now, buying a Corvette for a roofing business,
I've seen it done.
well, you just can't put much in the
I know.
doesn't have a lot of
But
towing
they took it
capacity.
to home shows with their name on it.
And there you go. Right. Well,
So
you wrap your vehicles though, which
I
is
do.
kind of falls in that. Do you need to wrap your vehicles? Why don't you just buy white or black or brown trucks? There's an ROI to wrapping, By the way,
Oh,
before you answer that,
absolutely.
how much does the wrapping cost, and how do you roll that through in
Um,
your mind now?
so I believe a wrap costs us about $4,600
Okay.
per truck, right?
And what kind of trucks are we talking about here? Are they crew
Just
cabs or?
yeah, usually either it's definitely either I'm trying to think something that'll hold front seat, back seat, right?
Sure.
I don't know if it's called the crew cab, but whatever, something like that. Um, but yeah, so you're looking at $4,600. But the way we track that is anytime any lead comes into the office, we're going to say, "Hey, how'd you hear about Apple Roofing?"
Mm,
Well, I I think it's one of the best uh, lead sources we have, right? Because so many of our clients say, "Well, we see your trucks all over," or
you're everywhere.
whatever. I actually, my first one I sold on was because I had one blue truck that I bought because it was a deal, right? Way back in the day.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, this thing doesn't match anything in the fleet. It doesn't look good. This wrap thing had just come out. Like I'd only seen one in my life probably.
Oh,
And I was like, I'm going to go try that. Like I'm going to go see what they can do on this thing and make it look good. Right. And I did. I tried it, and I had so many people thinking that we had a fleet of this blue truck. They're like, "Oh, you guys switching to blue? What do you got? About 7 of those?" And I'm like, "No, it's just one." And they're like, "Really? We see it all over." Well, in reality, you probably see the truck all over anyway, but you just drive by, right? It's what's making you notice it.
right.
So, I mean, that one, that one's a no-brainer to me. I mean, and honestly, I probably would like to be in an unwrapped truck now in my life. Um, you know,
Are you a bad
I,
driver? Is that why? You're a
well, I
little
mean,
aggressive.
there's times, but there's also times where you want to be bad and you can't. You
Yeah,
know,
because you've got a logo truck.
yeah, you're like, oh, I got a billboard I'm driving. I better drive good.
I can't park there. Ah,
Yeah,
darn it. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
But if I wasn't,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah. But it
so
does
but
make sense. And wrapping a vehicle is, especially when you have the call to action, like a phone number that you can see, have the wrap professionally done and professionally outlined so that you can get those leads in. Then it becomes a justification exercise.
absolutely. I actually discourage people from like getting crazy with their wrap and making it too flashy with like lightning and thunder and whatever. I mean, there's all these view every piece of real estate on your truck wrap as your brand.
Mm,
So if it doesn't say your brand, it shouldn't be on there, in my opinion. And I know a lot of people probably disagree with me. They might throw a Pink Panther on there or whatever, co-brand with the
mm,
OC or whatever. But anytime you're looking at two brands, the memory of the one starts to go away.
right. See, these are the kind of conversations that we're bringing to the table because you're not thinking like a $32 million company now. You're trying to think like a 50. Like that kind of branding conversation is not how other people think. We're just talking
Oh
about,
yeah, I think
should I
that.
get my brand out there? Now you're talking about splitting the brand representation on a vehicle. That's excellent.
Well, and I think as entrepreneurs, when we start out, especially, we might have like a little bit of an internal feeling that like, okay, this manufacturer is like a multi-billion-dollar company. If I put them on my truck, it gives me validity or whatever, right? Like, don't think that way. You need to think that you are valid, right? Like, you are going to take care of people probably better than a manufacturer will. We know how they are. They snake out of their warranty. And I remember that because when it comes to it, most entrepreneurs will. They'll go, this billion-dollar company just snaked out of their warranty. I'll take care of you in some way, the best that we can. And I think a lot of them do. Like,
Yeah,
realize you are just as good or better, and you should be proud of that brand. And you don't need another brand beside it to validate it, you know?
that's a great point. All of this from the ROI discussion of getting vehicles or
Yeah,
no,
here
it's
I
good
go.
though because this all goes into the big decision matrix. Like it's it's easy to make a decision to buy something, especially as you said with the shiny object syndrome, or you're at an
Well,
auction and you see a forklift, you think I need it, then you realize wrong tires, wrong fuel type, uh, wrong storage, wrong lift capacity, maintenance schedule, and you're like, uh oh.
Oh yeah.
I just bought a
Done some of
sailboat.
those. Done a few of those.
Just bought a
But
sailboat. Hey, you mentioned something to me in our first interview, in our pre-interview, this 120% rule
yeah.
that you have. What does that look like? How does that come into play?
So what were we talking about? Like kind of a ROI on
People. We were
people
talking about
there?
the ROI of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So um, I'm going to say when you have a goal as an entrepreneur that, hey, I know that in this market I can grow by, let's just say $10 million, right? I want to pull 10 million additional dollars out of a market. When you do that, so you want to do the math backwards. And this is just like a lot of the ROI stuff like that we just talked about. Like I
Mhm.
still think it's good to go through it in the same way as you would anything else. But with people, um, you're going to have like uh, a little bit more unpredictability. Okay. Um, Unfortunately, when we buy a Ford or Dodge truck, we know it's probably going to roll down the road most of the time. With people, maybe you find out that this isn't their calling or whatever. You do as much as you can to identify like who's going to be a strong candidate. But so we have the 120% rule.
Hmm.
So let's just say, and I'm just going to use easy numbers here. You wanted to do 10 million, and based on your uh, history with your company, your average sales rep does $1 million of revenue a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to give credit to Rodney Webb. This is where I learned this mindset. Um, but if each one does a million, then if you had 10 sales rep, you should hit that 10 million,
10
right? But
million, yeah.
go ahead and plan on 20% extra. So hire 12.
I
So,
couldn't agree more because things just never work out the way you think they need to.
well, and you're probably going to have the best of them excel, right? You're going to
Right.
see who, and if all of them work, that's fantastic. Like, cool. We exceeded our goal.
But that's not how it works. It's the 80-20 rule. 20% of your reps, the top two, will sell more than the last eight. And the last eight will have their own spread as well. It's just how things work because they're new, they're getting started, there's something going on in the territory, or they're not going to work out. They
Yeah.
just don't. Roofing sales isn't for them.
I have opinions on that. Um, I don't know if you want me to go into it, but
Well, you're here for your opinion, so how
well,
can I say no?
okay.
Yeah,
So I do see that rule is true in a lot of companies. That you have that top two selling more than the other eight, right?
yeah.
Um, I think if you really spend time and focus on like your training, you're gonna see it even out a lot more. Not
Hmm.
that there's not always going to be guys, but I mean, our guys are not. I think they're all over average because of the training they get.
What,
By quite a bit.
Dustin, what kind of training are you talking about? Product training or sales training?
Both.
Both.
And install training. So when we hire somebody, they're gonna. The only reason I'll have them out with the rep for a week is to start to get familiar with terminology just a little bit. Because I don't typically hire from within the industry.
Okay.
A lot of our people come from other industries. So uh, as soon as that's done, then they get a week of class training, uh, and that's going to be about product knowledge, good practices, and then they're going to have install, learning about manufacturers, defects, all. We want them to know about ventilation, the whole works before they get out of that class, right? And then they've got to test out of it.
Yeah.
And then after that, they're going to get a week of sales training. So it's a minimum of about 3 weeks to get through before you're ever going to like go sell something.
Right.
Does
To
that make
talk to a
sense?
customer.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
So we've had pretty predictable results with that, or it's definitely, what do they call it? Take the highs and the lows out.
Oh, flatten the
They
curve?
flatten the curve. It's a It's a coin phrase now. If
Yeah, it
it's
is. Is it ever?
flatten the curve.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I love the approach. And the reason that I separated the question as you started to answer it is because I want people on the show to understand that training your people, especially when we're talking about salespeople here, there's
Yep.
product training and there's sales training, and they're not the same thing.
Right.
Right? If I
Yep.
want to understand about membranes and application methods and site conditions, those are product training. But the
Correct.
sales skills training is a completely separate thing. I actually do sales training with a solar panel distribution company. They get
Oh,
lots
okay.
of product training. But they typically don't do any sales training. And guess where their results are going now for it?
Uh,
Through the roof.
Solar is one of those things like Windows too. It's such an awesome thing to sell. It gives you so much touch and feel and see, I mean, you can make it make a lot of sense really easily. Right. And I think some people are ashamed of sales. And if that's the case, you need to change your mindset because it's really an art form and you can
I'm just there
actually
to
help
help
a lot of
people.
people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm just here to help, and I'm the best solution to help you. I
Yeah.
know the quality we can do, and I would rather have you rely on me than rely on other people. I don't know how other people operate.
Well,
Yeah,
how many times have you bought something and then later down the road you see something very similar to what you bought but way cooler, and you're like, how come they didn't show me that? I'd have bought that. But the salesperson might have said, oh yeah, that, this guy, he just wants the base model, right?
yeah,
That's the value of a good salesperson, is they really educate somebody to their uh you know options, let them
yeah.
know what's out there, don't assume one way or the other, and let them make a decision,
Yeah.
with good knowledge.
Educating and consultative sales is the highest level of sales. I think if more people understood that a great salesperson is an educator and a consultant. Now, if you don't like consultants, you're not going to like that statement either. But a consultant really is there to help you make the right decision based on your circumstances. So if
Absolutely.
you see salespeople as that, or if you see yourself as a salesperson doing that, you're going to help lots of people. And by the way, that will translate to dollars in your pocket and the growth of your company and the kind of people you attract.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, nothing happens until a sale is made.
Zig Ziglar.
That is Zig Ziglar. That's Zig
I think
Ziglar. That's
so.
Brian Tracy. And you probably know I used to work with Brian. I built
Yep.
his business coaching organization just prior to this company.
You have one heck of a resume.
I don't even have a resume.
I
I'm
like bumping.
unemployable.
I like, yeah. Well, there you go. A real entrepreneur then. Unemployable.
Unemployable.
A lot of people listening to this can probably relate to that.
Yeah, haven't had a resume in years. And here we are, And again, the people listening to this show and shows like this, we're the ones driving the economy in the country. Creating jobs,
Absolutely.
making things happen, keeping, like you just mentioned, you're buying products, you're delivering them through your own distribution channel, you're getting the installation done. All of those people in that chain of work are because you sat down and figured out the numbers on the sheet about what to do for ROI,
Right.
right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that, we just worked on like our mission statement, right? And God, I've always thought, oh God,
Oh, I know,
it's so
Lucky
hard.
Charms, right? Who
It's
needs a
so
mission statement?
hard, and
Yeah.
it's like I felt like it's always a bouquet of virtues is the best way to say, right? Oh
Oh,
God,
yeah.
we're integrity and customer service and blah blah blah, right? But in reality, it is good to have this mission statement in place because it's like really identifying what you're trying to accomplish. And one of the things that we identified that we're trying to accomplish is we're trying to provide opportunities to our employees,
Hmm.
and maybe it's not like really cool to say to the general public, but that's the reality. And it does translate to better service to, the experiences somebody's going to have with an employee if they're, thriving in their job and they have a platform where they can excel.
Yeah.
So
It's not just a job, and you're not just a roofer or a carpenter or a tile setter or a painter. You're here to do something. We're here to. I think everybody on here is a proud craftsman. I believe that, and everybody I've ever spoken to, the ones that reach out to me, They're proud of what they do. They're really good at what they do. Really good.
Oh, absolutely.
And so now they're saying, okay, well, I've got the technical part down. Let's start looking at the business operations side. And that's when they call me or maybe even talk to you, right? Like they're out there and they want to know more. But I think sometimes they forget that they're making a big impact. That when the banks bail out the airlines, that's not what turns around the economy of the country.
No, I mean, we should probably see more ability to fail, right? Unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, or ability to, if they taught the kind of things that you and I are talking about now, if they taught that in school, what kind of a difference would that make if they actually taught leadership, business ownership in school, instead of us having to go out there and beat our heads against the wall and figure it out by accident?
Yeah, I really hope school is really analyzed in the next, decade and revamped, to give not saying that the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic aren't really great, right? But what else are they learning in there that's not pertinent, never going to use? Like, let's face it, it's reality. And what are they not teaching that's so valuable, right? Like what you're talking about, the leadership. Hell,
Yeah.
I don't, did you learn to pay your taxes in school? No. I mean, I didn't. We were left out of the very basics.
Yeah.
You know,
we did a budget
mean?
for groceries. We had to do a budget
Right.
for groceries. Yeah. Dustin, I have to tell you, I just sent my book off to the editor. It's called Construction Millionaire Secrets. And in that, thank you. Well, you heard the audio. You did a review for an endorsement.
Yes.
Thank you. Do you remember the story about Doug's Kitchen, where he's talking to his son? They're doing a fundraiser. They're selling donuts in front of a grocery store. Mm-hmm. And I just happened to be at Doug's house because I was helping him move stuff in the trailer. But it was interesting. The conversation Doug had with his son was so different than the conversation I grew up with. And Doug is one of those guys who buys companies and turns them into multi-million-dollar companies and sells them like he's changing socks. Like, to him, it just happens.
He understands the platform.
Yeah. And when I listen to how he talks to his son, I understand that their kitchen table is about working smart, and my kitchen table was about working hard. My parents would have said, show up earlier, smile more, stay later.
Yep.
And you'll sell more donuts. Doug's conversation was totally different. Totally different. Now, his son is just a kid. It's not like he suddenly, the heavens open up and angels sang. But I was listening and I'm like, this is good stuff. I'm going to write it down.
Oh, I mean, it's funny as parents, the things we tell our kids and how impactful it is. I mean, I've got kids of my own and I've started to pay attention to some of that stuff, and man, some of the things I've read lately about what you tell your kids, like if they're good, like you tell them they're good at whatever. I can't remember, that positive reinforcement.
Yeah, positively reinforces them being good at that.
Well, yeah, but they were talking about, man, I wish I was fresh on this subject. I had it down a couple weeks ago, but basically the idea was when you tell them they're inherently good at something versus they have the ability to be good, mm-hmm. they start to get sort of I don't need to practice mentality. And also I'm just good at this. So they actually clam up and don't want to practice that because they could lose and that would hurt what ego they think they have. Right. So they're talking about, I wish I could explain it better. It's a fantastic study they did. It had the results of the study and it was very fantastic, but it talked to them about how they have the ability to be amazing at something if they keep whatever, right?
Apply themselves. Yeah.
Yes.
Hey,
yes.
Dustin, I call parenting a grand experiment. We won't know how good I was as a parent until I start seeing the invoices from the therapist.
That's probably the truth.
I don't know. All I can do, I just love my kids to the most I can love them. And
Yep.
Yeah,
hey, we all have free will. Got to remember that.
Yeah. And I can't expect my kids to follow me into business. I grew up in a trades family. My dad was a journeyman welder fabricator. That was the conversation around our table. My dad made, I don't know if you can even say this anymore. The kind of truck body trailers he made were called China tops. The ones you load and unload from the side of the forklift. Yeah. That's what we talked about at dinner when my dad came home. That was normal conversation for me. When I heard Doug's conversation with his son at the kitchen counter, so different. So, I mean, but what do you do, right? His son, I don't know where his son's going to go. I don't know where my kids are going to go. No idea.
It's a lot of like the book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad,
Love that book.
right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I thought was cool in that book too, was like his dad recognized that he was not the one to talk about on that subject. So he sent him over to the neighbor's house, right? Because he was good at that. So that's a fantastic mentality to have, because a lot of us have to be the only one somebody looks up to, right? Or whatever. And
hero versus leader.
And yeah, in reality, like we want to send them to the best place, right?
Yeah. If anybody listening didn't catch the reference, that Dustin, what was the name of the book again?
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's an old classic.
It is a classic. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's written by Robert Kiyosaki. If you ever see it on the shelves, it's purple with black highlights. It stands out, a little bit of yellow on it. I had assigned that to one of my clients years ago to read because it's
okay.
Same reason that you're talking about here. And so the next week we're talking in our coaching meeting, and I said, "Hey, did you get the book?" And he's like, "I know. I went to the bookstore and they didn't have it." And I said, "What do you mean they didn't have it? Like, it's a bestseller. It's always on the shelves." And he goes, "No." I walked up to the girl and I said, "Hey, have you got Rich Dad, Poor Dad?" And I thought, how did he mishear me? Rich Dad, Poor Dad is not the title of the book. It's Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so we had this big laugh, and I guess I slur my words a bit too much. I was living in the prairies. Maybe I had a drawl. Maybe I had a little bit of an accent.
Oh, I picked that up in a heartbeat.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Do not read that book. I don't know what it is, but read the Robert Kiyosaki book. I would have to say that book is great. And have you read The E-Myth Revisited?
No, I haven't. It's on my list of books that I'd like to read, but I actually did start reading a book that you recommended to me the last time we spoke.
Scaling Up?
No. No. We talked about a lot, didn't we? No, it was the Rockefeller Habits.
Mastering the Rockefeller Habits.
What a fantastic book. I've enjoyed it. I was on a long drive last week, and I bought the audio version, and I've just really enjoyed it. It's one of those you're going to listen to more than once.
Well, you have to. I mean, the first time I read that book, I didn't get it at all. And it's about my industry, the industry of business coaching.
The funny thing is the different things you take away from a book depending on where your experience is at the time, right?
Huh.
So at one point in your life, you might listen to a book and be like, wow, this is dry. I'm not getting anything from it, whatever, right? Then as you maybe experience different things in life, now you listen to that book and you're like, holy smokes, like this is good stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Because you have to be able to relate it back to your scenario or situation.
To your life situation. Yeah. Yeah.
So
all of this from the ROI conversation.
I know. Sorry. I told you I have shiny thing,
But this is the way that business owners think. And, this is the challenge with being a business owner. If people are too linear, it's hard to grow the business because you have to have that business creativity and then the discipline to follow systems and put them in place. It's a rare and unique thing.
Somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago if I'd work for myself. And I thought about it, I was like, gosh, I don't know. And I ended up saying yes, but since then it's been bugging me. And I thought now I would say no.
What a good question. So the question was, Dustin, would you be your own employee?
Yes.
Or would you have you as a boss?
Yeah, I actually would say the answer is now no. Like I need to go find somebody that's better than me, right? Like, because like what you just said, the conversations you're having, right? Like I need to find somebody that I can sit and they're, be that fly on that wall and watch the whiteboard sessions, listen to what they're talking about, how they're seeing things, right? I don't need more of me. I already know what right? It took me a long time to get there, but there's somebody that I want to be on somebody else's, fly on their wall and listen to.
What's interesting here is that it sounds like we're not having the ROI conversation, but in your mind, we're inside the mind of a $32 million entrepreneur. You started from scratch to 750 to now 32 million. And everything you talk about is the return on your investment, whether it's investment of time, whether it's an investment of your mind power, what you're reading, what you're listening to, who you're hanging out with. all of those things. I think that is maybe one of the more powerful things that's coming out of this episode that people are going to listen to. It's pretty cool. It's very neat listening to you because I can see the directions you're firing off.
I get it from you as well. So it's been an enjoyable conversation.
Wow, cool. Hey, thank you, by the way. If somebody wants to find out more about you, I understand you have a podcast you're launching.
Yes. So we only have a couple episodes out, and I'll tell you what, practice makes perfect. You're really good at this. I'm going to have to get as good as you. But yes, if somebody does want to follow our podcast, Core Concepts is the name of it. It's really focused on just what that is, the core concepts that, can run a business, right? And scale it. So go ahead and follow us on that. If you're trying to look for me or get a hold of me, you can find me on any of the social media platforms except for the newer ones like TikTok or whatever. I don't know anything.
You probably shouldn't be on TikTok.
Your Facebook and your MySpace. Just kidding, not MySpace, but LinkedIn, whatever. You can find me, Dustan Biegler. So with an A, Dustan.
Dustan with an A. Biegler is Biegler, and it's super easy to remember. Apple Roofing LLC.com.
Correct.
We can tell when domain names are getting tight when we've got to add the LLC.
I know who has the right one, and I'm after him. I keep calling him. How much is it?
How much is it? I did that in one of my prior companies. We ended up leasing our domain name.
Okay. Oh, that's a cool concept. See, you didn't have to buy it. You rented it.
We rented it, and he didn't want to get rid of it, which was smart on his part, but we really needed it. So we ended up renting it or leasing it, and that worked out. That worked out for us. I mean, I wanted to own the domain, and as long as he played ball, we played ball, and he did okay on that. That was the pharmaceutical mail order pharmaceutical company that I ran. I know it has nothing to do with construction.
I thought you were going to say mail order bride, but
no, I don't do
mail
those
order
kind of
pharmacy.
Websites. Yeah, no.
Anytime somebody says mail order, that's exactly where my head goes.
Well, when I say mail order pharmacy, people usually think I sold Viagra, and we didn't.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
okay,
didn't.
Fair enough.
We didn't.
Well, you caught that thing right at the right time. You must have seen a trend coming and capitalized on it.
We did. Yeah, there was definitely a trend, but it came from actually Mastering the Rockefeller Habits, that book you're talking about. So anybody listening, the book that Dustan was talking about is called Mastering the Rockefeller Habits. It's written by Vern Harnish. Vern's a great guy, by the way. I know him. I've met him through the coaching that I do. But the more recent version of that book is called Scaling Up, and you can find that on Amazon or wherever. And it's definitely worth a read because it allows me to put on paper what I want the company to look like in the future. And now all I have to do is hold myself accountable to what future Dom has to do what past Dom said.
Right. Yep.
Yeah.
And I think most entrepreneurs buying that have the experiences that as they listen to that book, they're going to go, okay, I can relate to this. This is interesting. This is a solution to my problem that I might be having right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it comes to the fact that once you know how to run, for instance, a roofing company, Dustan, you understand, you know how to run a company.
Correct.
And so you wouldn't necessarily be freaked out if it was a coffee company or
plumbing, roofing,
medical device,
whatever
company. It's you know how to run a business. And that's I think the difficulty or the challenge that a lot of listeners have because we're in the position of growing our businesses is we see ourselves as our trade.
Correct.
And you're more than your trade. You're a leader of people. And once you get that part down, you can go any direction you want.
Absolutely.
All right, sir. Well, we know how to get in touch with you. You've got a new podcast called Core Concepts, and we know your website. Thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Oh, what an honor.
We're going to have you back.
It. Anytime.
All
I can add value somewhere, let me know.
I'm sure you can. Thanks, Dustan. Have a great day.
I appreciate it. Thanks, Dominic.
Bye.
Bye.